The mid-1980s marked a period when educational software began to captivate the imaginations of students and teachers alike, proving that learning could be both engaging and fun. Among the many games that emerged during this time, one title stood out for its unique blend of geography, mystery, and adventure. Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? Released in 1985 by Broderbund, the game tasked players with chasing the elusive Carmen Sandiego and her gang of international thieves across the globe. Armed with a knowledge of geography and a trusty crime database, players followed clues, cracked cases, and learned about the world, all while trying to stay one step ahead of the master thief. It was a game that taught without feeling like school, making it a beloved staple in classrooms and homes for decades. Today, we're on the trail of Carmen Sandiego, uncovering the history of this groundbreaking series, its impact on education, and the enduring appeal of tracking the world's most stylish criminal. So grab your passport, sharpen your detective skills, and join us for today's globe-trotting trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello and welcome to the 243rd episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week we'll tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game or the people who have created it. It can be about a console or the technology that brought it to life. We often talk about the companies that bring it all together, making our hobby video games a reality. While telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. Today, we are learning about Broderbund and chasing down Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, the 1985 game that turned learning geography into an international adventure. Combining mystery, exploration, and a dash of humor, it captured the imagination of players and classrooms alike, cementing itself as an edutainment classic. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, who'd probably spend all his clues at the wrong landmarks. He's my brother, Rob Casson. Rob, are you familiar with Carmen Sandiego?
We've mentioned the name many times here, Dave.
Have you played Carmen Sandiego?
I will give you 3 guesses.
Did you catch Carmen Sandiego?
Well, can't catch what you never tried to find.
Fair statement. If you tried, do you think you'd catch Carmen, or would you just end up as one of the accomplices?
You know,
Are you a villain?
that's part of the fun. Is it's the adventure is the friends we made along the way.
True statement. Well, we got a lot to cover today. We're going to cover Broderbund, which is a company we've never really talked about their history before. We'll talk about them. Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego was pretty much their first original product, so it all fits together. But before we get there, why don't you cover what else happened during this week in gaming history?
Alrighty. Kicking it off on April 25th, 1989, River City Ransom was released for the Nintendo Entertainment System in North America, blending side-scrolling beat-em-up action with light RPG mechanics in a way that was way ahead of its time. Developed by Technos Japan, the game followed high schoolers Alex and Ryan as they battled their way through gangs to rescue a kidnapped girlfriend, earning cash from defeated enemies to upgrade skills and stats. Its quirky humor, memorable dialogue, including barf, and open world structure made it stand out from other games of the era. Though not a huge commercial success at launch, River City Ransom gained a strong cult following over the years and is now regarded as a pioneer in the genre and a precursor to modern action RPG hybrids. We did look at it back in episode 21, so if you want to learn more, go listen.
21
Indeed.
months we were learning how to do this still.
Oh yeah, very long time ago. And speaking of long time ago, for another episode topic that we did back on April 23rd, 1998, the release, not our episode, the Pokemon Company was officially established to manage and expand the rapidly growing Pokemon franchise. Formed as a joint venture between Nintendo, Game Freak, and Creatures Inc., the company's mission was to oversee the brand licensing, marketing, and product development across games, anime, merchandise, and more. With the Pokemon phenomenon gaining massive international traction following the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan and Red and Blue in the West, the Pokemon Company helped coordinate its global rollout and maintain consistency across media. Over the years, it has been instrumental in turning Pokemon into one of the most successful multimedia franchises in history, managing everything from the Pokemon TCG to the hit mobile app Pokemon Go, and continuing to play a central role in the brand's enduring popularity. We talked about the origins of the franchise in episode 57, so go and learn more about all Pokemon, including the airplanes.
The airplanes.
Oh, yeah.
The airplanes are the best.
Next up, on April 21st, 2001, Tropico was released, inviting players to step into the boots of El Presidente and manage a fictional Caribbean island during the Cold War era. Developed by Pop Top Software and published by Gathering of Developers, Tropico combines city building mechanics with political simulation, tasking players with balancing the needs of various factions, including militaries, religious, capitalist, communist, and intellectual, while maintaining their grip on power. Players could rule as a benevolent leader or a ruthless dictator, making decisions that affected everything from the economy to civil liberties. Praised for its humor, distinctive setting, and depth of gameplay, Tropico carved out a unique niche in the strategy genre and spawned a long-running series beloved for its satirical take on authoritarian rule and Banana Republic politics.
Banana Republics.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a step up at this point.
Oh, it's almost on par with the Galactic Republic.
True statement.
On April 24, 2007, The Lord of the Rings Online Shadow of Angmar officially launched, bringing J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth to life in a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. Developed by Turbine, the game allowed players to explore iconic locations such as the Shire, Breland, and Rivendell, while embarking on quests that paralleled the events of the legendary books. With a strong emphasis on narrative, immersive world building, and cooperative gameplay, Lord of the Rings Online stood out in a crowded MMO market by offering a rich, lore-driven experience. Its innovative monster play PvP system and regular content expansions help maintain an engaged player base. Over time, the game transitioned to a free-to-play model, extending its lifespan and drawing in new fans, and it remains a beloved digital interpretation of Tolkien's world to this day.
I played the heck out of that one.
Yeah, I wasn't playing as many MMOs back then, so that one got past me, which is kind of upsetting. But,
It did not get past me. I play, I wasn't into MMOs, but I gave that one a try because I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and that just stuck. I mean, I got into that one before I got into WoW, to be honest with you.
Wow.
I know,
Yeah, no,
crazy.
I cannot say that one got to me, so that's unfortunate. But, you win some, you lose some, right? Right. Last up for this week in gaming history, on April 22nd, 2010, Nier was released in Japan, introducing players to a hauntingly beautiful and emotionally complex action RPG developed by Cavia and published by Square Enix. Set in a post apocalyptic world plagued by a mysterious disease and shadowy creatures known as shades, the game followed a father, or brother depending on the version, on a desperate quest to save a young girl named Yona. With its genre bending gameplay, which shifted from hack and slash combat to side scrolling and even text based segments, Nier stood out for its ambition and narrative depth. Though it received mixed reviews at launch due to its dated visuals and technical shortcomings, the game earned a passionate cult following, largely thanks to its poignant storytelling, memorable characters, and stunning soundtrack. Its legacy would ultimately be cemented with the success of its sequel, Nier Automata, turning Nier into one of the most respected RPG franchises of the 2010s.
Yes, indeed. I never finished that game. I started it, but I never finished.
Well, as is expected, it is another one of those that got past me.
Lots of games get past us, though. There are just a lot of games.
Oh, indeedy.
All right, Rob. If you looked at Doug Carlston's education, you'd never guess that he ended up founding a company that would be among some of the most successful publishing companies of all time. In 1970, he received his bachelor's degree from Harvard University. Wow.
Mm.
While additionally studying economics at Johns Hopkins. He went on afterwards to earn a law degree from the Harvard Law School in 1975. And that earned him a prestigious job with a law firm that was located high in the Sears Tower in Chicago, which is pretty cool if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought that it was the beginning of a lifetime career practicing law, where initially he litigated disputes over Lake Michigan water rights. That had to be interesting.
Yeah.
People take water rights seriously.
No, I agree. I'm not being
Tree law.
facetious.
People take tree law seriously too.
Yeah, no, it's crazy out there, man.
Life in the Windy City wasn't exactly what he had in mind, though. So eventually he packed up his things and he began practicing law in a small town in Maine. It's quite a difference. Life in small town Maine was, let's be honest, slower than the big city. He mostly defended hunters, night hunters, no less, because it is illegal to hunt at night. And apparently, plenty of people did it anyways, got themselves in trouble with the law. Most importantly, he found himself with a lot of free time on his hands. And so, with the extra free time, he began fooling around on a TRS 80 computer that he had bought to help the law office. And he taught himself how to program with the free time. Meanwhile, his younger brother Gary Carlston had also attended Harvard. Smart family.
Yeah.
And Gary, for whatever reason, had decided to major in the Celtic language.
Interesting choice.
But, surprisingly enough, you'd never guess, the
No job.
program was full.
Oh, what? What?
So, he couldn't. Instead, he opted to start taking classes in Scandinavian studies because it happened to be on the same floor as the Celtic department. It was locational.
Okay.
And in
Makes sense.
so he takes classes at Harvard, and in his downtime, he plays intramural basketball for the Radcliffe College team. Radcliffe integrated with Harvard. It's kind of one and the same. And his time playing basketball played a significant role in his next stage in life. So he graduates from Harvard and he travels to Sweden. No surprise, right? Scandinavian studies. And as he's traveling, he runs into other basketball players because that's his hobby. He likes playing basketball. That's what he likes to do. And that earned him a job coaching an all-girl Swedish basketball team.
Wow.
That man is living the dream.
Yeah, it's
I saw an article where he was like, "Look, all girls in Sweden aren't that like tall Swedish, girl. Uh,
but on a basketball team.
but on the basketball team, they were." That's
Yeah.
exactly what he said. That's exactly the quote. He goes, "They're not all like that, but they were on this team."
Yeah,
Uh,
just rub it in, buddy.
so he was an assistant on the team, and then he was a coach on the team, and he wasn't half bad at any of the roles. In his 5 years with the team won 3 national championships, and they were the runner-up for the other two. So after a while, he ended up returning to the United States, and he taught Swedish at a college in Washington State. That's where he ended up. After that, he was hired on as the state director for the March of Dimes in Oregon, and that's a job that led him to move to Eugene, Oregon. But he wasn't in love with that job either, and he ended up quitting in the summer of 1979. And for the next 6 months, roughly, Gary found himself unable to find a job. Back on the East Coast, his brother Doug had managed to develop a strategy game called Galactic Empire. and he took his finished strategy game and he sent it out. He reached out to three different software houses, all of which wanted to sell his game. And with his law background, he managed to negotiate a contract with all three, which would allow them to sell his game, but also allow him to retain the rights to continue selling that game himself.
Oh, nice.
We've
Wow.
actually covered one of those publishing houses in episode 155. It was Adventure International. Adventure International was one of the first companies that produced adventure games for microcomputers when they became a household thing. And they also published other titles, one of which was Galactic Empire. So if you want to learn more about Adventure International, episode 155. Encouraged by the success of Galactic Empire, Doug continued to create sequels in what's called the Galactic series. I believe there's 3 or 4 of them. There was a trade and barter one, there was a battle one, I think there was another strategy one. So there was different galactic games. And in the midst of all this galactic conquest, so to speak, he decides he's going to move to the West Coast. And he rents a place in Eugene. And because that's where Gary was, right? And
Hmm.
knowing that Gary was unemployed, he invited Gary to come live with him. So now the brothers are living together over on the west side. And so they're there in Eugene, Oregon, and trying to figure out what's next, right? One had left his law practice, the other doesn't know what he wants to do after quitting his job with the March of Dimes. And Doug just throws out the suggestion. He says, "Hey, look, why don't we start a software company?" And Gary has no idea what he's talking about. Zero background in software development. As the story was told in an interview, he didn't even know what the word software was. I mean, this is so early on in computing. That's a possible story, you know? But he had no other prospects. He didn't know what he wanted to do, and Doug's idea was as good as any, you know?
Hmm.
So basically, Gary said, sure, and their future was decided. Now, Doug's first game, Galactic Empire, used many names that were taken from African languages. In it, there was a group of evil merchants that are called the Broderbund, which was roughly translated from the Afrikaans language as an association of brothers. And the Carlstons liked this concept of brotherhood, but there was one problem. There was a reason why they had chosen the Broderbund as a group of evil merchants, because the AB or Afrikaner Broderbund was a South African Calvinist slash male secret society that was formed to promote the advancement of the Afrikaner people. And while it originally started out as a secret society, by this time, its philosophies were the basis for the South African white supremacist National Party, which was responsible for the apartheid, which was a system of institutionalized racial segregation that existed in South Africa from about 1948 when they took power until the early 1990s when they relented it. Nelson Mandela, very famous historical figure, is very famous for speaking up against, they jailed him. The National Party jailed him. He spoke up against apartheid.
Rings a bell.
Rings a bell. So that's the AB. That's the Afrikaner Broderbund. So in order to distinguish themselves from this unfortunate core language, the brothers decided to change the spelling of Broderbund from its South African spelling to a more Scandinavian resembling spelling that we know it today, which is also loosely translated to brotherhood in German, Danish, and Swedish, Scandinavian languages, right? And so with that, Broderbund was registered and established on February 25th, 1980. It's Bruder, like goose. I had to look up the actual phonetic spelling of it to figure that out. Because you always want to say Broderbund, because like it's an O with a slash through it, you know? And Broderbund is like commonly used, but like I said, I looked up somewhere someone had said no, it's this is how it is, and someone spelled it out phonetically. So I had to pull out my like phonetic alphabet and be like, what the heck? And that O in the middle is goose, oo as in goose. So it's Bruderbund. Cool story, bro.
Yeah, it's different.
So originally, The idea was for the company to create software for law offices. And they were going to continue to market or develop video games as a side business, so to speak. But what they quickly found was that there was a lot of money to be had in publishing video games because that continued to be a significant source of revenue for the company. Our topic today, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, is actually the first original product that was developed within the properly established Broderbund software company. But in the beginning, it actually looked nothing like the game we know and love today. In 1983, there was a programmer named Dane Bingham, and he thought he could create an earlier, or better rather, version of the early adventure title Colossal Cave Adventure. We've talked about Colossal Cave Adventure a lot. You know, it's also known as Adventure. It inspired many, many, many different games in the early days of games development. So if you've been listening for a long time, going through our archives, you will know undoubtedly trip on this game. And we're here again, yet another game that was inspired by the Colossal Cave Adventure. While around the game, Dane noticed that players would often struggle to find the correct synonyms for commands that were programmed into the game, right? So, this is one of the early text adventure games where you had to type everything you could do, but it was so early in computer development that it was very limited. There was only a handful of words that could be used, and we know that the human language extends way beyond that, so people really struggled to figure out what were the exact commands that the game needed. And that was just a limitation of the programming and computational power of the time. Colossal Cave Adventure was designed in mainframe. It was a mainframe game. This is early, early, early before personal computers in the home's early video game development, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And we've heard this again. So many adventure games like the Sierra Group, and, that's what I was thinking because of Mystery House. And who else? Maniac Mansion. There were so many adventure, like LucasArts, rather. There were so many other people that kind of looked at that and thought, I can do that better, right? And they all went on to create amazing things, and this is no undoubtedly different. Dane here thought that he could take a similar concept, Colossal Cave Adventure, and turn it into an adventure game for children. And at the time, when 1983, the Apple II is out and increasing in popularity, and he saw it as an opportunity to change the text commands into graphical menus. So he laid down the groundwork for his idea, and then he brought it to what was called Broderbund's Rubber Room. And the Rubber Room was basically the art room, the story room. It was basically a room with the creatives where the programmers could bring the products and other employees would flesh out the concept art and they'd kind of work on drawing out the story for the game. But when the team got their hands on Bingham's game, they just weren't feeling his story. It was based on the childhood game of Cops and Robbers, and basically, you set off to capture these groups of people, and the team just they weren't feeling it. They it was too much, too little, and so with the Rubber Room team, Bingham continues to kind of flesh out this concept into something the entire team that could be happy with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a work in progress at this point. And while this is happening, Gary Carlston, the Swedish brother, right? Uh, he has another idea, one that he brings to this project team. He thinks back to his childhood, where he traveled around Europe as a child. No doubt, probably why he got into Scandinavian studies, right?
Yeah, helps.
And he suggests changing the game from an adventure game to one that was based on geography. Now, when this idea was presented to Bingham and the team, it fell flat. I mean, on paper, it sounds boring as heck, right? Like, what are you gonna do with geography? How are you gonna make that a game?
Right.
I mean, I don't blame that team for looking at him and scratching their head and going, what?
Not at all.
But Carlston wasn't giving up. He hired a writer to come up with a new story. It was based around a book series by Time Life Books that were called Great Cities. And Great Cities was a series of illustrated books that explored what else but great cities across the world. They had them for cities like Berlin and London and Paris and New York, and there were all these. They had ancient cities too that didn't exist anymore, like Babylon. It was a whole fantastic series of illustrated books. During the creation of this narrative, when this writer is writing and Carlson's trying to make his idea stick, he comes up with the idea to instead use the World Almanac as a source of information, more readily available, more information basically. And he asked this writer to shift his focus to information that can be found within the World Almanac instead. Now, this writer, Doug's writer, a man by the name of David Siefkin, also started with the Colossal Cave adventure. But in his version, the map of the cavern became a map of the world, and each room in the cavern became a country that contained treasures that could be found using the language, culture, and geography of the country. So now we're a little bit closer to what we know today.
Indeed.
When Carlston and Siefkin returned to the rubber room with this idea, it was received much better. I mean, it's a much more fleshed out concept at that point, you know. And it was decided that this would be the direction of the project moving forward. Now, Bingham wasn't in love with the idea, but he took it and he helped develop a basic gameplay loop upon which they could, build out the game. And in his initial script, the game would select a random villain and a random stolen treasure and start the player in a randomly selected city with a clue of where to go next. And of course, he was making a graphical menu interface. That was the innovation. And you would use the menus basically to ask questions and track this down. Getting the right answer would give the player another clue to the next location, and this process would repeat roughly 5 or 6 times until the villain is caught, and then a new game would be started. Siefkin believed that they could design it in such a way that children would learn about the world through trial and error as they played the game, not necessarily wanting to just be reliant on the almanac. Broderbund liked this concept, liked the gameplay loop, liked the strip, so they basically so they basically approved it as is. This was going to be the development pattern moving forward. Now, David Siefkin's story, his early draft, which was based on the World Almanac, was titled World Quest. That was the early game name for this. And in World Quest, players would be tracking down treasures that were stolen by several different villains, one of which was a demented and fabulously wealthy former professor named Professor Esteban Devious.
That the actual name?
That's the actual name, Esteban Devious.
Wow. Alrighty.
Now, one of the other villains in the group of them was described on paper as an agent, double agent, triple agent, and quadruple agent in so many countries that even she has forgotten which one she's working for. Her name? Carmen Sandiego. Carmen, squeaky squeak, Carmen, equally from the Brazilian singer and actress Carmen Miranda, as well as Carmen was the name of a dog owned by Siefkin's former roommates. And obviously, San Diego is named after the city in California.
Oh, that makes sense.
So the name Carmen Sandiego caught the eye of the project manager who was overseeing the whole deal. Her name is Catherine Bird. And she believed that the name Carmen Sandiego represented something exotic and mysterious, and that putting the focus on a female character would allow for young women to also be able to connect to the game. And also, when they started posing questions about the game and the direction and everything, one question came up that was posed: where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? And well, it just sounded cool while directly informing players of the game's goal. So the focus of the game was pared down to this idea, and the team worked on fleshing the rest of the game out. Now, what they came up with were two opposing organizations. There's Vile, Vile, which is the Villains International League of Evil. And then there's the Acme, ACME Detective Agency. And jokingly, Acme stands for a company that makes everything.
Wait, like that Acme?
Like I have no clue, to be honest with you. I have zero clue.
Huh.
But interesting take on it, isn't it?
Yeah, and when you think about it, they really did make everything,
They
even in the
really did make
cartoon.
everything, right?
I wonder if that's what that stood for. Yeah, I'm gonna
I
look into that now.
I know. I was thinking the same thing, but I did not go see if there's any correlation. So, in their new idea, players would start out as recruits in the Acme Detective Agency, and they would work their way up the company ladder, so to speak, by locating various henchmen, various vile henchmen, until they were good and ready to track down Carmen Sandiego herself. Carmen herself physically was modeled after the company's manager of marketing services, Marcia Bell. Many of the other villains in Vile were modeled after other Broderbund employees. So, there's representation of themselves in the game. There's a few other funny little anecdotes from its development I want to talk about before we move on. When Gary suggested pulling facts from the World Almanac, he always had it in mind that they would have to distribute copies of the almanac with the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's kind of not fair to ask people to buy a game at the game store and then go to the library to get the almanac to be able to play the game, right?
Right.
So they knew they were going to have to package them together. And so as they were working on building this out, that was part of the process, right? How do we get copies of the almanac to package with the game, to distribute with the game? So they had to figure out how to make that happen, right? At the time, one of the biggest traditional book publishers, Simon and Schuster, still one of the big publishers, they had been making offers to buy the company, to buy Broderbund software. We've discussed this in other episodes. At the time, there were various book companies that saw how popular computer software was, and they were looking to diversify their business into computer software. And many of them made offers to purchase software houses to get into that business. And Simon and Schuster was going after Broderbund software, but Broderbund wasn't interested in selling, and they continuously told the company no. Still, when it came time to look for a partner that could help with the almanac part, they called up the publisher anyway, thinking maybe they'll want to stick to their lane, stay in their lane, and partner with us to sell almanacs. To no surprise, the company was not about it. In fact, they were very dismissive over the whole deal. They basically said, "Why don't you go partner with your local bookstore for a discount?"
Nice.
But obviously, the almanac was still needed. So the company found another publisher to help, and that publisher ended up selling over 4 million almanacs packaged together with this game.
Oh wow.
I would also like to reiterate a point I made earlier on, is that as the development went further and further towards completion, Dane Bingham, the programmer who started this all, became increasingly skeptical of the game's success. By the time it was nearly complete, he was convinced that it was going to flop. Now, with that being said, when Carmen Sandiego was about to release, Broderbund was in process of changing its salary structure. Initially, its programmers had worked on royalties, but they were switching to a system like many other software developers at the time, where programmers would work on straight salary and not earn any royalties from their work. We've talked about how Atari did that at one point and lost people because of it, right? In fact, I think that's where Activision, you had a bunch of developers who didn't like that they weren't getting credit and they weren't getting paid, so they left Atari and they went to Activision. Each programmer was allowed to keep the one last hurrah. Whatever project they were working on at the time, they would be allowed to keep the royalties from before they switched over to the salary system. Make sense?
Makes sense.
So in Dane's case, many of the programmers on this team, that project is Carmen Sandiego. And Carmen Sandiego ended up earning him 7 figures in royalties over the years.
Oh, wow.
It's over $1 million in royalties. It's safe to say that maybe his feelings on the game probably warmed up over the years.
I would hope.
He actually left the company to go do something else for a short while after the game was released because he was kind of burnt out and he was convinced that they had just spent a lot of time making a failure. And so he left to go work on a different project, and he was pleasantly surprised when he returned. So, all right, with that being said, obviously they did release the game. They packed it along with the World Almanac and Book of Facts by Pharos Books. Screw you, Simon and Schuster. And that was released on April 23rd, 1985, which is this week 40 years old. You know, Rob, hearing how Carmen Sandiego started as a completely different game and slowly evolving through collaboration, experimentation, and a little geographical inspiration is just a testament to the magic of creative teamwork.
Yeah, and the fact that it was almost called World Quest and came this close to being about a guy named Esteban Devious instead of Carmen, wild. It just goes to show how much of a great idea can shift with the right team behind it.
Exactly. And if you've got an idea you want to share, whether it's gaming history, stories, or just a podcast of you and your friends talking shop, Zencaster is the perfect tool to help you bring it to life.
All right, lay it on me. Why Zencaster?
Well, Zencaster is an all in one podcasting platform that lets you record high quality audio and video straight from your browser. There's no studios, no confusing setup. You, your mic, and your message to the world.
Okay, sounds good. But what about editing? I don't have a background in audio engineering.
That's all right. Zencaster's post production tools handle all of that for you. They're tools that will clean up your audio, they'll balance volume levels, and they'll even remove background noise as well as filler words like or ah. It's a huge time saver.
And once I've got that masterpiece recorded and cleaned up, how does it go out to the world?
Well, Zencaster makes distribution easy too. You can send your podcasts straight to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more, all from the same platform. There's no extra steps, no uploading hoops to jump through.
Well, you sold me, but if our listeners want to get started, what do they do?
Well, that's simple. They can head over to zencaster.com/pricing and use our offer code, all one word, memory card lane, and you can get 30% off the first month of any paid plan. Whether you are new to podcasting or looking to take your show to the next level, Zencaster has got a plan for you.
You heard them, listeners. If you've got a story to tell, or you're just hoping to solve the mystery of where in the world your podcasting journey should begin, Zencaster has you covered.
Exactly. Visit zencaster.com/pricing. Use our offer code, all one word, memory card lane, and you can get started on a reduced plan today.
And with that, let's get back to Carmen, Vile, and how Broderbund turned a skeptical team into a globe-trotting hit.
When the team at Broderbund released Where in the World Was Carmen Sandiego, they didn't really understand what they had made. They marketed it, initially sold it as a mystery exploration video game, and were admittedly surprised when it became popular in classrooms, and very surprised when it eventually became recognized as an edutainment media franchise. After that, it was clear that the success of the series was going to start in the classrooms. And so awareness was built through that channel, through editorials in magazines, through marketing, through promotions targeted at teachers. The future launch price of $38 was specifically chosen to stay affordable to teachers. What they thought, factually, was that by getting their games into as many classrooms as possible, Broderbund was increasing sales through what is the pull-through effect. As children played entertaining games at school, they requested the game from their parents at home too. Between 1986 and 1998, Broderbund continued to make Carmen Sandiego video games. There are lots of them. Lots and lots of them. These included, our first one, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, became Where in the USA is Carmen Sandiego. There's Where in Europe is Carmen Sandiego. Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego. Where in America's Past. Where in Space is Carmen Sandiego. There's even a children's, like young children's version called Carmen Sandiego Junior Detective. They even prototyped state-specific versions of the game, although only one was ever partially made. Where in North Dakota is Carmen Sandiego?
Oh.
Come on, that's cool.
I mean, sure.
It's technically the fourth game in the Carmen Sandiego series. They made it after World, then USA, Europe, and then they made Where in North Dakota is it? And basically, it's like a pilot. I say prototype, but realistically, they made 5,000 copies and sent them to schools throughout North Dakota. So it's technically a game. It's technically a game. It's one of the random games that was actually rescued. Like someone found it, saved by the Video Game History Foundation. So a little interesting deal there, where people have to find out what's going on around North Dakota, right?
North Dakota.
North Dakota. Yes, North Dakota.
Okay. Fair enough.
And like I said, that was followed up with Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego, where you have to chase criminals through time. You're a time cadet. Eventually, you become a super time sleuth. I don't know why I just like that. Wait. Here's the progression of that game: time cadet, time patroller, time investigator, time inspector, time detective, ace time detective, and finally super time sleuth. So if you want to know how one progresses up that ladder, there you go, Rob.
Sounds good to me. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense,
Carmen branched out of geography at times. Broderbund made additional games. There was Carmen Sandiego Word Detective and Carmen Sandiego Math Detective. Eh? Eh? Language and math?
Yeah, I mean, it's a logical continuation, but, I mean, I don't know, man. How was it?
Everything did good. Carmen Sandiego has sold well throughout the years, like very well.
Even the math stuff, huh?
The math stuff won awards by educational magazines, so
Well,
um,
shit.
it won Parents' Choice Gold Award. The word one won more awards, I should say. The math one, I was staring at one set of awards. So during all of this time, Carmen Sandiego also appeared in 3 television shows. I loved Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. I used to watch the heck out of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. It is my love of introducing me to my love of a cappella music, because Rockapella did the theme song for that show. And that's how I learned about rockapella. That's how I learned about a cappella music, and that love has not left to this day. So there you go, little fun fact. But there were 3 television shows. Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego gave way to Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego, and that gave way to Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego. So 3 TV shows published over that amount of time. Now, the Carmen Sandiego series did not end in 1998, but unfortunately, Broderbund did when it was acquired by the Learning Company. But the Learning Company wasn't about to let such a storied brand go to waste, and so they continued a tradition. And since 1993, there have been a handful of additional entries in the series. Some ones like Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, Treasure of Knowledge, Carmen Sandiego's Think Quick Challenge, which is basically a little multiple subjects quiz game. So again, branching out of just geography. She did go into 3D. Carmen Sandiego, The Secret of the Stolen Drums is an action adventure video game. So that kind of broke sort of kind of from the traditional style. That's on PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube. It did not rate well. Its highest score is like a 57 out of 100. Uh, I just because I'm looking right at it and it's great. Rob, the closing comments in IGN's review of the game: is Carmen Sandiego the secret of the Cylindrums worth your hard-earned cash? Well, if you're a major fan of the television show and PC games, then no. If you're a gamer looking for sweet platforming action, then no.
Wow.
It may
Okay.
entertain the kiddies for a while. Otherwise, just rent it if you're curious.
Jesus.
Oh my goodness. There was a French language Carmen Sandiego game that was released in 2009. That's a bit interesting. 2011, the Wii got a series of games, Carmen Sandiego Adventures in Math. So they kept with the math thing.
So it had to have worked.
Yep. There was, no joke, a classroom based customer service training course at Scandinavian Airway Systems called Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego's Luggage?
Wow.
That's one of the best ones. They turned Carmen Sandiego into a corporate training tool. Oh, that's pretty darn funny, actually.
That's something else.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you grew up having played it and then you go into work and then, hey, here's your training. And you're like, holy shit.
Yeah,
Started
exactly.
you out as a kid playing games and started you out at your new corporate job.
There have been others. We got a Carmen Sandiego Returns on iOS in 2015. Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego trivia game was played on various airlines. That was made in 2019. Gameloft made a couple. They made Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego in 2008, and they announced they're doing one based on the Netflix movie that we'll talk about in a second. That's actually, it was just released. Scratch that, March 4th, 2025. So a little over a month ago, there's a new Carmen Sandiego, a new single player game in the Carmen Sandiego franchise. And that goes with the Netflix film that came out in 2020. There was an interactive animated film called Carmen Sandiego: To Steal or Not to Steal. So there are still, heck, in 2019, where on Google Earth is Carmen Sandiego in celebration of an anniversary. I don't even know if it's a celebration anniversary, but they integrated a Carmen Sandiego game into the Google Earth platform, which was really cool.
A lot of hype around this Carmen character.
There are some unofficial ones too, made by we know what unofficial means. One interesting one is Where in Hell is Carmen Sandiego?
Oh?
This is the beginning of the plot when you start the game. You are a famous crime buster hot in the trail of that world-renowned thief Carmen Sandiego and her latest gang. The rumors that she had died in a bizarre accident don't deter you. After all, it might just be misdirection. So you track her to the dark woods of Io Era, where you encounter three hideous beasts and lose your way in the night.
Nice.
And Where in the Hell is Carmen Sandiego? Players use detective skills and knowledge of facts from Dante's Inferno.
What?
There you go. It's Carmen Sandiego, but it's based on Dante's Commedia Inferno. That's great. Anyway,
That actually is kind of fantastic.
yeah, that's a lot of fun. That's a
Especially
whole
because
lot
the
of fun.
Dante's Inferno game was sick.
Yeah,
I know it's referring to the novel, but
it is. Yeah, you know, Carmen Sandiego, 40 years later, is still teaching children about geography. Would argue it's probably not as popular as it was. It was. I mean, it was in every classroom, like every computer lab when I was in elementary/middle school. We didn't have computers till I was like in fourth grade, I think. I think third or fourth grade. But it was on computers, so we played Carmen Sandiego in classrooms. And like I said, the TV show was around for a long time. That was a lot of fun. So Carmen Sandiego was a big thing. I don't think it's a big thing anymore, but she's still out there teaching kids hopefully about geography, so that's fun for sure. I have no complaints about that. How about you?
No, I'm not complaining.
No?
No,
Nope. But over the years they've managed to win hundreds of awards. The entry website Broderbund says over 125 awards since its inception. That's cool. And they've probably sold. I wish I could see somewhere where it had a. Does it have total sales? By 97, wow, things have updated since then. It said by 97, Carmen Sandiego had been translated into 3 different languages and over 5 million copies had been sold into schools and homes. Um,
Wow.
it's one of the longest running video game series, having existed for 40 years now, though.
That's an impressive feat.
It genuinely is. Having that, they just released a new one this year, last month. So that's 40 years. So it is in the pedigree of longest running video game series for sure. Definitely one of the earliest, let's say, edutainment titles. And between that and the Oregon Trail, these were the games that really, I think, helped people realize that there could be educational merit when it came to creating video games for the classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
In case you're wondering, the series is currently owned by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, which is a textbook publishing company.
Well, that would explain why I wasn't aware of them.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's Carmen Sandiego, the ye old geography treasure stealing girl. Fun, huh?
Fun indeed, Dave.
And Broderbund.
Yes, good old Broderbund.
Good old Broderbund. There were other episodes that we talked about in the beginning. Crap. I mean, this game was based on Colossal Cave Adventure. We have talked about that countless times, including the game itself. We did an episode on the game itself. So if you'd like to check out any of these early games, you can, of course, do so by going to anywhere you get your podcasts. Our archives are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, but of course, you can find it by going to our website, www.memorycardlane.com. Rob, what else can people do on our website?
You can find a calendar of our future episode topics. You can find a link to our Discord where you can come chat about episode topics or other gaming related topics with Dave and I. You can find a link to our Patreon where you can help support us and get access to ad-free and unedited versions of our episodes. And you can find links to our social media where I can be found on several platforms as Rob_O_Raptor and Dave.
I can be found on various platforms as David is Wrong. Each week, we'll tell you one story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game, a console technology, a museum. Got one of those too. We just pick one topic relevant to this week and we roll with it. Well, telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. See, I go through that really fast because they've already heard it. Mm-hmm. Anyway, one of the best parts about doing this week after week after week is that every time I sit down to research a new episode, I inevitably learn something. So it's this fantastic cycle of learning and teaching and teaching and learning. How ironic, given the topic for today is an educational video game. Rob, what did you learn today?
Well, I learned all about Carmen Sandiego, having never played it or seen it or even seen the movie or any of the other stuff. But I think my favorite part of it was that the brothers they went on a whole life track that kind of never would have thought you'd take them there. I mean, hell, the one was coaching a Swedish girls basketball team and then became one of the developers behind one of the longest running video game series.
That's a fact.
Quite a transition in what you do in life.
We've talked about Broderbund before, but we've never really focused on the company. You want to know, just to kind of give you an idea on how successful these guys were, you're going to know some of the other games. Choplifter, the Choplifter series was published by Broderbund. I loved Choplifter when we had it. We had it for the Atari. Lode Runner, Karateka, Prince of Persia. We did a whole Prince of Persia episode. That is a Broderbund video game. Not only that, but their normal software titles like Mavis Beacon.
Yep.
We did a whole typing. That's one of their software titles. The Print Shop, one of the most successful desktop publishing pieces of software. Back in the day, you could use it to make banners and stuff like that and print it out on dot matrix computers. The Print Shop and Printmaster, those were software titles made by this company too. So they were a huge, huge deal before they were purchased and acquired in 1998 by SoftKey. And one of SoftKey's brand was the Learning Company, so their software became Learning Company software.
Nice. I definitely didn't know that. That's a lot. So yeah, they've definitely been ingrained in some of our for earlier episode topics. But you had to have learned something yourself today, Dave. So what's your big takeaway?
I was interested to find out. I would have never guessed in a million years that this started out as someone who said I could make a better version of Colossal Cave Adventure.
That's fair. That is very fair.
Because it doesn't resemble an adventure game in any way, shape, or form, right? Um, we've
No.
we've seen countless other games where someone has said I can make a better version of Colossal Cave Adventure, and they've done it. Frankly, a lot of the greatest adventure games in the early parts of that genre, video games period, were people who said I can make a better version of Colossal Cave Adventure. That is an incredibly, probably one of the most influential video games in the beginning of this industry. But when you look at Where in the World Is Carmen Sandiego, I would argue never in a million years would you have guessed that that's where this game started. So
No,
that
I would
was
not have.
that was fun for me too. All right, Rob. Well, that'll wrap it up for Carmen Sandiego. Before we take it out of here and look at next week, is there anything you'd like to add to today's episode?
I'll just take a quick moment to say thank you so much to everyone for listening. It means the world to us to have you along as we learn about these episode topics. And I know you hear that every week. So sorry to repeat, but sucks to suck if you don't listen to this part. So thank you.
Rob, as we close the case on Carmen Sandiego, we are reminded of how this educational classic taught us that learning could be an exciting adventure. By blending geography with thrilling gameplay, it captured the imaginations of students and gamers alike, frankly. So whether you're chasing clues or exploring new places, always remember the joy of learning through gaming. Next week, we are trading the chase for Carmen Sandiego for a journey to the aliens landscapes of the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Released in 2002, this groundbreaking RPG invited players to forge their own path through the volcanic island of Vardenfell with a level of freedom and depth that redefined the genre. Join us as we uncover the story behind this landmark title and explore why getting lost in Morrowind is the best kind of adventure on next week's epic trip down memory card lane. Do the thing.
Where's Carmen?